Go, Mr. Chairman.
Microphone's on. I muted it. The microphone won't turn. Okay, just mine's on. Just hit the buttons, guys. Okay. Hit the buttons. Your mics.
Just so it turns green.
Yep.
All right, just to make sure, can you hear us, Noreen?
This thing's supposed to be on. Well, it looks like it's the master.
I can hear you now.
Thank you, Noreen.
Thank you.
Okay, you're
All right, I
welcome.
want to welcome everybody to the Town Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for August 23rd, 2023, and everybody could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Noreen, if you could do the roll call, please.
Surely. Chairman Payne,
Here.
Commissioner Claffey,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty,
He's absent. He called, he's had a work emergency, so
okay,
he's excused.
okay, Commissioner Havens,
Here.
Commissioner Linares,
Commissioner Lennars contacted me too. He had a conflict.
okay. Commissioner Trister,
Here.
Commissioner Woods,
Here.
Commissioner Droz,
Here.
Commissioner Fox,
Here. Commissioner Passarelli too.
I'm here.
Do you have that, Noreen? G is here.
yes, I got that, thank you.
Very good. I would like to sit Commissioner Fox for Commissioner Haggerty. And I'm going to have Commissioner Drodes, if you could sit for Commissioner Lennars. Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I don't believe there's any changes to the agenda, Paul? Nothing? Okay. Next thing on the agenda is public participation. If there's anybody within here or on within Zoom application, raise your hand if you'd like to participate during public participation. If calling into the Zoom meeting by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand to be recognized. Use *6 when recognized to speak by telephone. And if you'd like, state your name and address for the record. Is there anybody online there?
There's no one online, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody here would like to speak?
This is for old business.
This is a public participation.
Yeah.
As long as it's not a drink.
Hi, y'all. I am here as a CROG employee. Name is Jacob Knowlton. I also live in town, but I wanted to come in person and hand y'all these flyers, which pretty much is the QR code and then my email at the bottom. We're out for our public participation portion of our regional plan of conservation and development, and we want to make sure everyone's represented. I know this town kind of has a dodgy past in terms of like relationships with CROG, and we're kind of, or at least I'm trying to mend that. So we want to make sure that y'all get the opportunity to both respond to this survey yourselves, and in addition to share it with whoever in town. It could be your corner store individual or whoever. But can I pass this out to all y'all? Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you. There you go. Of course.
Thanks, Jacob.
No problem.
Thank you, Jacob.
Of course.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Of course.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Is there, nobody's online?
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Hand?
And if you want any more copies to hand out, I'll obviously be here.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Seeing that there's nobody else for public participation, we will move to remarks by commissioners. Is there anybody, any commissioners have any remarks? Hearing none, we're gonna go to public hearing portion, but before we do that, I'm gonna have the secretary read the procedures for the public hearing, please.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. Procedures for public hearings. The order of proceedings at public hearings shall be as follows. A, convening by chairperson. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairperson to act in their stead. C, presentation by applicant. D, town planner report on the application. E, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application, limited to 3 minutes per person. F, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application, limited to 3 minutes per person. G, rebuttal by the applicant, limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairperson whether the time limitations should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance by a majority vote.
Okay, thank you very much. The first public hearing is petition 11-23. Commissioner Fox, would you mind reading that for me?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Petition 11-23 zoning regulation, text amendment pertaining to section 3.15 special permits allowed in B-BT zone to add section 3.15.17 banquet hall and section 9.2 to add definition for banquet hall. Applicant Newington TPZ. Contact Paul Dixon.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We'll go to staff. Paul, would you like to fill us in on this?
Mr. Chairman, as kind of noted in the staff memo, this was in positive response to a pre-application of someone who came in and spoke to the commission about opening a banquet hall on Kitts Lane. I believe that's the former VFW building. Currently, banquet halls are kind of only permitted as a banquet hall as a VFW, as kind of a private organization. This simply just adds banquet halls as a use, and it doesn't actually put any specific requirements under that banquet halls. Again, this is a special permit use, which is similar to all the other assembly uses in that area. So it's fitting with the regulations the way we have them now. And so that's adding banquet halls, and also the definition for a banquet hall, which is a building, room, or portions thereof that are used to provide space, whether rented, leased, or otherwise made available to any person, group, or entity for an event or function that may or may not have food or beverage service, such as a conference or meeting, party, wedding, reception, fundraiser, or similar occasion. It's a pretty standard boilerplate across, definition of banquet hall that's out there in many municipalities across the country. So the one thing to note too, that this does put it in the Business Berlin Turnpike zone. By reference, everything within the Business Berlin Turnpike zone is also applicable in the PD zone by special exception. So that's just something to note. In that staff memo, I kind of laid out a map that you could see of where the Business Berlin Turnpike and the PD zone were. So you get an idea of what this regulation would affect. But again, it's just adding another assembly use to ones that are already there. There are already theaters and things like that permitted in these zones.
Any questions?
I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Claffey, go right ahead.
you use the word assembly, how does that impact outside of, my first question is, how does that impact, or this, while we're kind of putting words together, outside the BT zone, BBBT zone, and this so-called also allowed in PD zones? It just seems weird that now we're just kind of having this, like, where else could somebody put a banquet hall in town if they met all the requirements? You're saying that really nowhere else in town until now.
So, I think that would be, if we're looking at the impact of other zones, those zones may have similar ones. We didn't, we were looking within the confines of business term, like, and the PD zones on how this impacts it. But as far as how they were permitted in the past, a lot of times they end up being accessory to a hotel, and they're kind of accessory uses. In the past, there haven't been that many banquet halls specifically. The ones kind of would be those, the associations, the nonprofits who had them, whether you have a Legion or anything like that. That's typically how banquet halls were done. And a lot of them in Newington kind of existed that way. So this just impacts just those zones. If we looked further about where it was permitted, we can do that. If someone came in and requested and saying we want it in this zone, we do an analysis of it, say whether they can and can't, and then we bring it in front of you.
It's like a lot.
So wouldn't you just then, why don't you open it up as where it fits within our zoning per special permit? You'd have to come here anyways. You're kind of pigeoning this, saying, we'll allow this now, just in these kind of areas that we deem. I'm just kind of a little taken back, because there's already a banquet hall on the Berlin Turnpike per your definition. And it has nothing to do with nonprofits or anything like that.
2315.
I mean, it's been there for almost 2 years now.
Which one's?
Right next to Cables and Connections.
Oh, first off, okay, I think.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how it's there. It fits into that. I get it, but we're in this kind of, I see like every meeting, or at least once a month, we're having text amendments. It seems to be a reoccurring theme. I mean.
And actually, I think it's a valid point in that, one of the items that I want to be looking at with the commission, as well as looking at the regulations, again, the whole of them, but looking at these type of uses and saying, okay, what makes sense, what doesn't, what ways can we better define these things? Because yes, right now it is very specifically defined, and that's kind of how the regulations are. We could work on uses that kind of make more sense, whether we call them assembly uses, such as this. And when I use assembly, it's kind of a building permit type of term.
I mean, this brings me back to the brewery discussion, because we had that broken down to what, 4 parts? I think.
It falls under the same section,
Okay.
Basically the
Well,
three.
we had, in the beginning of that talk, we had it pigeoned only to one area in town you could open a brewery. And then it was like, wait a minute, why wouldn't you want to open this to the whole community if it fits within, most breweries, as that discussion was, in industrial zones, because they need the size, the height, and all that. I just don't know why we're just kind of pigeoning it in, because into one zone, it feels like we're gonna go through that brewery process again, which started out kind of with one piece of paper, and then before you know, we had 4 new terms built out. I mean, is that something we haven't even really discussed that?
I think that part of the intent too was the way the regulations are currently written. We're kind of trying to conform to them, because some of them are very specific. The B zone, you can have a print shop and a morgue, and then over here you can have this, and this.
Understand.
So we're trying to be at least consistent for now until we do an overhaul.
Would there be any language? I know forget it. Go ahead.
Okay, any other questions? Any other questions? All right, it's a public hearing, so we will open it up to the public. Is there anybody online that has any comments?
Nobody online, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody in the room in favor, wishing to speak in favor? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, Hearing none, if it's no objections, I think maybe we should close this and move it to old business for additional, for possible action.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Rhodes. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved to move this to old business. The next public hearing is petition 13-23. Commissioner Trista, would you like to read that?
Petition 13-23, special permit section 3.2.8 for a childcare facility at the Temple Sinai at 41 West Hartford Road. Applicant Tiffany West, Around the Clock for Tots LLC. Owner contact Tiffany West.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here or?
The applicant is
I'm here.
online.
Okay. You'd like to give us a brief of it? This should be pretty simple. This has been a childcare facility for many years. But if you would like to give us an overlay, we would appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. So I am looking to have the special use reinitiated so that I am able to open a childcare facility. I'm looking to open the doors to no more than 40 children between the hours of 6 a.m., 6 p.m., offer jobs in the community, curriculum, safe place for these children to learn and grow while their parents are at work.
So, I mean, Mr. Chairman, this is the prior floor plans was approved, I think, for the prior two applications. She's not making any changes, we're told, to the room layout, so.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the commissioners?
Nope, no changes. As he indicated, I did work with the last facility that was there. And I enjoyed my time there. I was really sad that the doors were closing, and I would have loved to try to keep those doors open to the community at that time. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to do so. So I'm really excited to have this opportunity now.
Very good. Is there any questions from the commissioners? Any questions? Okay, public hearing. So we're going to open it up to the public. Is there anybody wishing to speak in favor of this application, either here or online, that would like to come forward? Anybody wishing to speak in favor?
There's no online, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition, either here or online? Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Okay, hearing none. I'll entertain a motion to move petition 13, to close petition 13-23 and discuss it under old business.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and seconded by Commissioner Claffey. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next public hearing is petition 14-23. If Commissioner Claffey could read that, please.
Petition 14-23, special permit, section 6.13 for an accessory apartment at 83 Summit Street, applicant, owner, and contact Jerry Choinsky.
Okay. This was an accessory apartment previously. Is the applicant here or online?
They are online.
Yes, we're here.
Hello.
Would you like to fill us in a little bit, fill the commissioners in a little bit?
So this house was built by my parents back in 1980. The space was originally a garage that was converted into an apartment for my grandparents back in like 90-ish. And it's been that way since. We are taking the house over recently, and now we're just realizing that it was never zoned for it from the start. So we weren't aware of any of this until recently, that it wasn't zoned for it.
So we just want to make sure that, everything is on the up and up. It's Jerry's parents that will live in that apartment. Previously it had been his grandparents. So we've made no changes. Otherwise, we just received the house a few years ago from his parents. So we're just looking to make it all appropriate. And we're doing permits on the other work we're doing. So we're just trying to get it all done appropriately.
Not a problem. Very good. I'll go to the town staff for a small report. This had an accessory use.
Yes, so this was actually, so it was built out, as the applicant noted, with the accessory use. No permit was obtained at that time. I believe that they were getting work done on the house. The building official was out there closing out other permits. And then it was discussed with them, and then they came in to fill out this permit. The building official, I did speak with him. He was out there. He said the workmanship looked good. What was out there looked good. It's just a matter of coming in and getting the special permit for the accessory apartment that was not previously given a permit.
All right, I'm just trying to formalize it like they said.
Okay, very good. Any questions from commissioners? Okay, we'll open it up since it's a public hearing. Is there anybody either here or online that would like to speak in favor of this application?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, no one online?
Is there anybody wishing to speak in opposition to this application, either here or online? Hearing none. I would entertain a motion to close petition 14-23 and discuss it under old business.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and seconded by Commissioner Fox. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Do we stay on for the rest of the meeting or are we set at this point?
You can if you want to, or you could call the town planner in the morning. I don't see a problem with this. I'm only one vote, but this is should be just preliminary. But you're welcome to stay on.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is approval of the minutes. We have minutes for the regular meeting of August 9th, 2023. We have any corrections on those? And yes, Commissioner Droz.
It was a meeting that I've missed, so I actually rather enjoyed and paid attention to a lot of the discussion as to drive-throughs in the center of town. Page 8, who's Commissioner Connolly?
Anybody recognize those comments?
Apparently Commissioner Connolly said, I think it's a good idea, certainly more volume than, I just don't know who that is. It's nice to know everyone in the room, you know?
Yep. We do have a Connolly on ZBA.
Could be Haggerty.
Commissioner Connolly was responding to Chairman Payne. Other than that.
Been around a long time and never seen a commission.
If I may, I think it may be with the correction of that name, we'll have the tape reviewed on that one little spot and just correct the name.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the proposed correction by the town planner of whoever was speaking. If there's no objection. Motion made and moved and seconded by Commissioner Droz. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries to approve the minutes. Okay, we are under, there's no new business. We're under old business now. And the first thing we have up under old business is the petition 11-23. I'll entertain a motion.
Petition 11-23. Zoning regulations, text amendment pertaining to section 3.15, special permits allowed in B-BT zone to add section 3.15.17 banquet hall, section 9.2 to add definition for banquet hall, applicant Newington TPZ, contact Paul Dixon. Motion to approve. Move to approve the text amendment pertaining to section 3.15, special permits allowed in B-BT zone to add section 3.15.17 banquet hall, section 9.2 to add definition for banquet hall. Reason for approval: the use is similar to other assembly uses already permitted in the zones and does not conflict with the POCD.
Motion made by Commissioner Fox. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Havens. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is petition 13-23. I'll entertain a motion for that.
Petition 13-23, special permit, section 3.2.8 for a childcare facility at the Temple Sinai at 41 West Hartford Road. Applicant Tiffany West, Around the Clock for Tots LLC, owner contact Tiffany West. Motion to approve with conditions. Move to approve the special permit, section 3.2.8 for a childcare facility at Temple Sinai at 41 West Hartford Road. The condition is the permit is subject to the requirements of section 3.2.8. Reason for approval: the use is the same as previously approved at the site with no modifications to the proposed building or use.
Motion made by Commissioner Havens and seconded by Commissioner Fox. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is petition 14-23. I'll entertain a motion for that.
Petition 14-23, special permit, section 6.13 for an accessory apartment at 83 Summit Street. Applicant, owner and contact Jerry Choinsky. Motion to approve with condition. Move to approve the special permit for an accessory apartment at 83 Summit Street. The condition is the permit is the subject to the requirements of section 6.13. Reason for approval: the proposed accessory apartment complies with the zoning regulations.
Okay, we have seconded by Commissioner Fox. Motion made by Commissioner Trista. Any discussion? So we have no time scale on this, correct? The way it's written? As long as they own it, they'll be good. They won't have to come in 2 years to renew it or anything like that. I think that's,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
You can't transfer it.
you can't transfer the time scale, and that's the incorporation of those regulations has to comply by the book.
Very good. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Okay, we are petitions for public hearing scheduling. I'm not sure if Paul would like to talk about anything on that.
So this one is just a freestanding sign, again, at 300 Hartford Avenue. That'll be in front of you when we can get it on the docket.
Very good. Next thing on the agenda is the town planner's report. Go right ahead and take.
So as we know, the current applications are listed for those looking along, and what I will do is I'm gonna share it. Okay, so at the last meeting, I had was asked to have a draft of the drive-through regulation that has been included in your packet. We kind of went over drive-throughs, the the different criteria, kind of weighting the importance of them. Again, what we have currently in our regulation and what was suggested from the research that was done. What I've kind of put on the screen for you now is when we last discussed, we discussed about kind of the difference of the areas of that. It was kind of looked at, okay, where would we look at for uses coming in? Arterial roads were the primary, but there was that kind of discussion about, well, what could or couldn't go on Main Street and what could have an impact. From then, you'll see in the regulation that I proposed narrowing it at the start, and the commission can, if they would like to open it back up, but narrowing it to drive-throughs for restaurant uses on Cedar Street. Right now, Route 175. So that would limit those 3 drive-throughs we have existing, and then any other site development that would have to build compliant to it. But then that would be kind of a start. It's opening the spigot, but not fully. So going into the drive-throughs, talking about the different streets. So Cedar Street is both of these, Cedar Street and Main Street, are state roads. So Cedar Street is a 4-lane arterial road, as we all know, heavy traffic during peak times, and it's the primary east-west corridor. Main Street is a 3-lane arterial road, 2 northbound, 1 southbound, between Route 75 and Market Square, and there's a considerable amount of pedestrian traffic generated by local business in the area. That's kind of been followed through when reading our POCD, when reading other road safety audits that were done in this area. It kind of looked at the 2 areas as slightly different. So after that conversation, kind of be thinking about the difference of those 2 streets and kind of the impact it could have. So again,
How do you,
regulation as put forward, I don't think you'd want me to read it, Mr. Chairman. If you do, or it was in the packet. So I'll leave it up here for us to go back through. The one item I can add is when we talked about previously the accessory drive-through, including indoor service for restaurants, we could add restaurants are encouraged to add outdoor seating and walk-up windows where feasible, if the commission would like to add that wording in that as well. From there, again, your arterial streets are Cedar, East Cedar, 175, and then 176, which is Main Street. So in the BTC, there is currently 9 drive-throughs, which have been constructed. You have one at 66, 40, 79, all on Cedar, and then you have the remainder on Main Street. So you can kind of see, again, the BTC zone in that purple, and then each one of those stars is correlated to an existing drive-through. So what we did, because it was asked kind of what would this regulation have an impact on the existing drive-throughs? The 2 major distance regulations on this are distance to a corner intersection, which is 100 feet, and then distance to a residence, which is, again, I believe that was at 100 feet, 100 feet of any residence. Yeah. So, and that part was added to when we were discussed, originally said should not be located or shall not be located within. We discussed kind of the volume and that being a criteria. So I put together some wording for that to talk about if they're within 100 feet of adjacent residential structure, they're required to submit a sound study that identifies sound levels and adverse impacts. Because it was discussed that there might be some mixed use development in the future of the town center. There could be apartments that end up close to it, but how could those 2 work together? So again, it would require the applicant to study that and actually present that evidence to the commission that it wouldn't have any negative impacts. So from 66 Cedar Street, again, you have an existing drive-through that's in the back. Again, it's a classic bank teller, single window. It's 141 feet from the nearest residential structure, and it's at least 450 feet to the nearest corner intersection. Yes.
When did we start doing on diagonals to the structure and not the lot line? We have yet to define that in our code. We brought that back to the marijuana requirements 5 years ago. So wouldn't it be the straight line from point A to point the clearest zone, not the structure?
So in the regulation, and again, this can all be changed. This is all
our current regulation.
So our
futuristic regulation.
Yeah, so our current, actually for the BTC, there are no current written requirements. They've been dealt with individually as each application came up.
So when this bank was put in and this drive-through was put in, there was no regulation for drive-throughs?
In 1985, there was no specific, and then there still is none. There's none that have a listing of criteria within that zone.
So why are we trying to regulate the future and not all of them that are currently don't have regulations to them?
So that's actually, this proposal is, it adds it as an accessory use, and that's actually the consideration once I kind of go through and look at how these impact it and how this regulation does. The way I'm proposing this is actually an accessory use to the primary use. It's accessory to banks, pretty much what we have, banks, laundromats, pharmacies, and then adding restaurants. So what they're typically, the restaurants would be what we added to.
Do we currently have a regulation? I asked this at the last meeting that regulated all the drive-throughs that were already in the town center. And what I'm hearing is no.
There is no specific.
So how did they all get in?
They were approved through special permits. They were approved.
When this goes in, it makes them non-conforming, or they're currently non-conform. Well, they're not non-conforming because there's no rule. So we put a new rule in, then they become non-conforming.
And that's what I wanted to go through these ones and show which ones could be, and then what's the consideration for the commission.
They all become non-conforming because there wasn't a law or a regulation
so
when they were.
What they would be, so if there are aspects of the current drive-through which don't match these regulations, then yes, that would be a non-conforming
We're
aspect of
not
that.
doing that. We're not making anybody
You
non-conforming.
can't make a business.
We had that problem with the automotive uses, making automotive uses non-conforming. It was a big problem.
Yep.
So whatever regulation you come up with, I think we're trying to make this too complicated, frankly. These are existing businesses that were in this town center, and we're trying to keep the businesses going. So if they can safely bring a drive-through there with any other type of business, I don't have a problem with it. We also have a drive-through, we have a pad site over on Best Market site that is approved, I think, a drive-through pad site.
Yeah,
Over
I
there at
believe it's
Best Market.
expired,
So
but yeah.
that's your interior.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with that? It's already approved.
Then it'd be expired. So if it's expired, if it's gone past the time, then that approval is no longer valid.
Isn't this drive-through that everyone's talking about, that the elephant in the room that's causing this problem, already a pre-existing drive-through that is now non-conforming to begin with because it never had a regulation to go by, and it's an interior lot, it's a pad lot. It doesn't enter or exit off a main road. It enters and exits out of parking lot.
It's not that it's non-conforming, it's conforming to its approval. So if they came back and modified it, they would have to get a modification, but no, there are no specific criteria under which to measure that modification, other than what they present at the time. So that's why I wanted to, again, it was, okay, here's the regulation that was based upon the research, best practices, those type of things.
But that's not a regulation. You can't, that's like hearsay.
It's based on research so.
Is it a regulation of the town of Newington?
Currently, no.
All right then.
And then that's what we did. At the last meeting, we brought up the Business Berlin Turnpike regulation, which again has those requirements, 150 feet to a corner.
Yep.
Again, that wouldn't work down here because there was one's a lot shorter than that. It was shortened to 100, and that's the discussion. So the point of putting these regulations forward is not me telling you, this is the regulation you have to have. It's saying, here's based on the research, based on the concerns, here are criteria. And if you want these in the regulation, if you want different criteria, if you say strike B, strike that is for the commission to kind of determine, because it is the commission's regulation. Again, I'm here to provide the best guidance I can from those different research and from what the best practices are. So, and I do have identified in here which ones could be an issue. So that's what I wanted to bring to the commission's attention.
And just as a point of interest on this particular one, I could not find an approval for it. As you see, the note says it shows up on a plan, the date of October of 1985. Doesn't ever say the plan was approved, but that's what's in the file. It's there, so, but then again, no one's arguing it.
So by the current regulation, this one wouldn't be non-conforming. It's 141 feet from residential structure. It's located behind the existing use. This one would actually be conforming with the regulation as proposed.
Yeah, but if the regulation our current regulation isn't even define how we calculate distances.
Yeah, and this one, actually, so this regulation, Yeah, and we can go into the wording. It says to the nearest residential structure. So again,
I'm saying how we define currently outside of just a drive-through, how we define the distance from structure on lot 1 to structure on lot 2 and those distances between. You take it in a straight line, here you're looking at a 45. That doesn't coincide with the other way you take distances.
yeah, well, that would be a straight line between that, again,
Where the drive-through is,
Where the
where the
drive-through
intercom
is.
would be.
and then a straight line to the residential. And that's what that's showing. That 45 is the straight line.
Yeah, but the actual, that
Property is.
that
goes
property
back.
is bounded by, your house is bounded, if it's within, that house could be 40 feet back and still meet. And then it's closer to.
Yep, and if the commission, again, doesn't want to use that requirement, that's fine. If the commission wants to say to the nearest residentially zoned property, that would make it aligned to that
Well,
zone.
how do we, but that's my question. How do we define distances in our regulation regardless?
We have different areas that define it different ways depending on the regulation. For good example, automotive uses have to be, a specific distance away from a residentially zoned property. So that's property line. And now you have other ones, again, with speaker locations that have say, must be this distance away from a residentially zoned property. We're looking at it because of the potential mixed use characteristics of that. If you said to the nearest residentially zoned property, well, if it's a mixed use zone, is it residentially zoned? And now all drive-throughs say, nope, you can't have any of them.
Yeah.
Because someone says this regulation says zoned, mixed, no.
And you did a couple of years ago, just as another point of reference, you eliminated the distance requirement for intercoms in the PD zone for drive-throughs.
Yeah, it would.
BT?
The PD zone for that, for the,
So what is it on the PD, on
Yeah.
BPT?
it's,
300
300
feet, but McDonald's has continued to get variances to reduce that, yeah. Yeah.
I think 300 feet is ridiculous. I think the new speakers and
Right,
stuff.
exactly. When
the
it
new
was put-
speakers aren't designed like the older
Of
ones.
course,
And I don't think a bank speaker could be just as loud as a restaurant one. So,
Yeah, I know. So if you don't mind, I can go through some of these sites so we can look at the sites. And then if you want to talk about the regulation, I just wanted to show you.
we'll see if any commissioners have any questions or. Any questions?
I'd like to see what other displays he has.
Okay.
I understand Anthony's question about the diagonal distance versus just the straight latitude, but let's see what else we have.
It is interesting, a brownstone building looks completely different from the air.
Yep. Again, that's what it looks like on the site. So that's the drive-through that we're talking about.
And I'll say, I'll point this out, I live about 140 feet from that drive-through.
Mhm.
Granted, I've been there 5 years, maybe heard people talk to each other. I can count on one hand, then the bank went out of business or moved.
Yeah, as
The impact study on the traffic, it's surely not in this specific, it's not that building. The queue line, you could fit 100 cars in that parking lot.
Yeah, as noted too, and that's why we provide a second, just for actually, so where a drive-through either enters, this is not a regulatory distance. Just for example, of how much room is there on this site before you even get to the drive-through? Because there's a lot. Some of these sites have a significant amount of room. So again, that's the drive-through we're talking about there. So the next drive-through would be 40 Cedar Street. This is the Walgreens building, a former Walgreens. Again, it's 150 feet to the nearest residential structure. And then it's at least 255 feet from the nearest corner intersection. All that complies. You see, it's actually 200 feet to even get to the back line of where it would queue. This site has significant amount of queuing.
A drive-through.
You can't even turn a car and you gotta, it's
just right here.
It's odd that it didn't come, the parking lot goes behind those trees on the left.
It was there.
It's odd, I mean,
I'm loading a truck, you're not getting through.
it's an interesting.
I gotta wonder, will there be some existing drive-throughs in the center that won't comply? And should we not even have a distance requirement and do it by special exception? And if these drive-throughs have not bothered anybody in the past, depending on the use, we can gauge it from there. I mean.
Absolutely, yes. So the commission can, there's no, if that's, again, these are just draft.
Yeah.
This is not set in stone.
Chairman Payne?
Yes.
I assume that, sorry, I play with building codes all day. I assume that an existing drive-through in an existing structure which was approved, whether it be special application or no regulations or whatever, to Commissioner Claffey's point, I assume they're gonna be grandfathered in, where they're not gonna be having to go rebuild their stuff. Obviously, the exception becomes.
The problem though becomes if any of our new regulations places those people non-conforming, we don't want to do that. If it creates a non-conformity, then we're not doing justice to our regulations. We should not create any non-conformity. Commissioner Fox was here when we had the problem with the automotive uses.
Okay.
Commissioner Rhodes and then Gia, go ahead.
I only ask because, building codes change constantly. There's a reasonably good chance that none of us in this room live in a house which is up to current code today, just because they change so very often. And okay, it's all well and good until you want to redo your kitchen. Well, you need to bring it up to code now. Sorry. There's different circuits just for the very basis of it, but you're fine as long as it doesn't get messed with. So what I don't know is the headache from the automotive aspect of it. And that's why I don't know, is grandfathering even a thing? Knowing code from building codes.
You can grandfather a use, okay, not like a code. You have to update a code if it's changed. You're never grandfathered in on any code things. I don't believe.
Yeah, if you change it.
Right.
Yeah,
You do have to
if
bring
you
it
start
up.
touching it, you own it type of thing.
No such thing as grandfathering in.
It doesn't go with the property, it goes with the use.
Use,
Right,
yes.
so Walgreens went out, if another drugstore went in, they could use it.
Yes, they could use it. Yes.
If it becomes a drive-through liquor store, they can't use it. They need to come back for special exception. Yeah.
I mean, just one other point, I'm sure Paul will point out anyway.
Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to make the point, but going back to that meeting, I believe this came up because there was the potential of a restaurant, right? In going in, and we don't have any drive-through restaurants in the center, right?
That's correct.
So, I mean, I think I want to just bring it to the heart of it and it's actually, it was a comment that at the end of that meeting, this gentleman in the room mentioned, and the consideration about our town, walkability, pedestrians, and what we want to have. So while I appreciate all the idea of retrofitting parameters into drive-throughs that make sense to us, I at the same time, I understand that what we want to be able to do is assess each situation on other merits as they come up and how they impact our town and our sidewalks and our pedestrians as they come up. I mean, I don't want to lose the sort of essential of the conversation and why I think this is coming up.
So again, I was just gonna point out, so the main reason we're talking about this is because drive-through restaurants by special permit in this section in the BTC points back to the B zone. The B zone says restaurants excluding drive-in. So that's where the problem is. So
why don't you just take that out?
It's an option.
So again, the question is, and the question for the commission would be, do you want to open up the entire BTC to drive-through restaurants? Because without narrowing it, it opens up it to being able to apply for a special permit.
To apply, but not necessarily get it, depending on the type of use and how much of an impact it's gonna be. Commissioner Woods.
The Fenn Road Plaza, when we approved that for Noodles, didn't that have a drive-through component to it? I thought so. I didn't come in yet. We don't have one in the center. We do have one approved drive-through. There's only one in town that I know of, where you can actually, you pre-order your meal and drive up and get it.
Yeah, a drive-up window.
Drive-up window.
Drive-up
It's not
window.
gonna be Noodles anymore, just.
Yeah, and I realize that, but
Can you go
we
to
approved
the picture where you had this numbers and stars in the, because that I think, read that one, because so there's 9 total,
Correct.
all existing.
Yes.
Some were approved by special permit or site plan, some I could find no record of
Yeah.
an approval, just because they're old.
Thanks for pharmacies.
I think
I'm sure there
I think
was a
6 of them are banks.
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure
you
there
have
was
two
a
of them are pharmacy.
regulation. I'm sure they didn't not use a regulation to approve them.
No, but I only say that because the odd thing of the banks is they're all different styles.
Yes.
Right, like the Bank of America one, I believe, whatever it was originally approved as, I can't remember what bank. But I think that those drive-throughs just showed up like on a plan in the early seventies. There's no approval, it was just, you know.
That was
it-
Connecticut Bank and Trust, that's how long
Right.
ago that was.
So,
And then I brought up at the last meeting because, and I used Liberty Bank because that one abuts. I forgot about the old Berkshire Bank. I walk by it every day, but I don't know if we go through this, how much we more kind of pigeonhole structures that are based on occupancy. Because a bank could go out, mostly they always stay banks because there's a vault inside most of them. I don't know in the future how that's gonna hold up anymore. Banks are getting less people and more ATMs. But like, you had talked about your distances and stuff like that, it almost like pigeonhole where, to Gia's point, like if a restaurant ever wanted to come into downtown Newington and there's potential in the big red area there, are we hindering and knocking things out of sync? Because I think the part of what we approved on the red, I don't know why it's in red.
it's a different zone.
Different zone, okay. Someone wants to put a restaurant there and there's ample space to move vehicles and change their original plan. It's like, there's to the point of what's in downtown is walkability, restaurants, and that's the key component here, because that's the Achilles heel to the drive-through. So if a food establishment wanted to go into one of those stars and the bank moved, they're, you know, if we over regulate it, it's like no one's gonna want to come to downtown.
Possible, yeah.
I mean,
You got a point.
Any other commissioners?
I think we keep it a special exception.
It would stay as a special, it would be a special exception. They're all a special exception. We could just eliminate a couple of the wording there that Eric just mentioned, where it allows restaurant, drive-throughs for restaurants in the center.
and also open it up to the B zone as well, just because it points back to the B zone, so.
Yeah. But they all have to come through here and they all have to work. So by special exception, we get a look at it. We get to determine whether or not it needs any screening, whether or not it needs anything else, whether it works, whether the traffic works or not. I mean, is there a section in the existing one which covers your traffic study analysis? I think there is. Isn't it?
Currently in the town center, there's one that covers it for any special exception within the town center. That could be added a little. It doesn't go into, I believe, as much of the queuing language that the Berlin Turnpike went into. Because Berlin Turnpike was very specifically for drive-through restaurants.
Yep.
And again, the only thing I would caution about is if there isn't criteria specific to the use, yes, there's the general special exception criteria, but it is beneficial to have that criteria when a application is weighed and looked at. Again, it's a level playing field for the applicants, but again, if the commission wants to go in that direction, you know, that's something that we can look at. If you would like me to, I can go through these. I'll go through them quickly and show you. So again, the next one is 79 East Cedar, 114 feet. And this is not even the corner intersection we're talking about. This is a driveway. And 152 feet. So no issues with that 100 feet, even if it's removed. 148 feet to the nearest residential structure.
And they have frontage.
Yes, and they have frontage on Cedar on 175, so that would comply with the regulation as written.
is the frontage based on the entry door?
So frontage based on the regulation is actually parcel frontage. This is
Okay.
general frontage.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yes. This one does have it in the front of the building. However, the way the regulation says is that an existing drive-through can be permitted in a change of use in its current configuration. And really what they would have to do, as long as it complies with the regulation and some screening around it. But other than that, it allows it to be used, you know, some plantings dress it up around it. So that is those distances, again, 79. 1120, this is one that would be non-conforming with the regulation. You have a 59-foot distance right here between that and kind of the intersection point of where these come together. You have 102 to the out. This actually can kind of jam up a little with cars and clear up. And this is kind of the question is this something that the commission would want to transfer over to another one? Yes, another application would come in for a special exception where they'd have to prove that it could work for the cars and the queuing. This is one I would have concern about with the queuing.
I will say with queuing, it does, because
Well, you don't,
you can't
based on
pull
the,
into the parking lot, even if you're just gonna use the bank, not even the drive-through.
it depends on the use. I mean,
Yeah,
it might
it's
not be.
usage.
It really depends on the use.
Yeah, and the queuing is really because people park in
Yeah.
the fire lane.
Yes.
That's the problem
Yep.
there, because they're too lazy to walk the extra 50 feet. And you know what, the bank does a pretty good job, because I'm in and out of that bank a lot. They'll go out and get them. They don't move, but they yell at them. You know, you can't park there. Yeah, I was only gonna be in the bank for a minute.
Yeah, so again, this was approved, it's on an existing plan from 1970.
That's the pedestrian unfriendly drive-through in this town, for both cars going north and, or east and west.
See, the issue there now with your residential, I'm pretty sure.
32 feet away.
Yeah, those, there's apartments on the second floor.
So that's the one we're talking about, of course.
Beautiful building.
Yes. And then the next one, 1095. Again, this is a close, this is measured 96 feet. This is based on GIS. GIS is not incredibly accurate. It's not a survey. It's pretty darn close to the 100 feet. And again, this was approved in 2011. So that bank there, and it's 215 feet to the nearest residential. So there is an issue with that. And you come in 250 feet before you even turn into the drive-through lane. And that's the M&T Bank. 1133, right next door, the TD Bank. Again, this would actually be longer if you measured it out, but the program doesn't allow you to do that. But plenty of distance between that and the corner intersection, and plenty of distance between that and the residential.
That one has some queuing problems at times. Not bad, but.
Yep. 1181, again, a little closer to the corner intersection for the interior. That actually measured a little short, could be a little longer than that. This is the CVS.
Yes.
They have it, so the circulation, you're supposed to come in off Main, come through and then exit. There's no entry signs in the back. Again, that's just a little closer to the corner intersection. So if that's an item you were looking to strike from the regulation, that's something to consider. Again, that's just, again, the CVS drive-through that we know. 1220, the Bank of America, again, closer to the intersection at 91 feet. Fine on the entrance to the backside, but it was approved existing plan in 1969. And then you have 1300 Main Street, which no distance issues to the corner intersection, 250 feet from where the speaker would be to the nearest residential property. Rear of the site, this would have no issue with the current regulation.
So on that one there was and correct me if I'm wrong, in and out of living in Newington at the time. Was the Liberty Bank building itself there prior to them coming in with the,
No.
or were they all approved at the same time?
The Liberty Bank was approved separately with the drive-through. It was a vacant piece of property.
They're all built at once.
Oh, okay.
Liberty.
Yeah.
I was asking because there's a bank, a standalone bank that maybe didn't have one and then they saw the potential there. Okay.
Land swap with a residential neighbor to the south
This right here.
to get that strip for.
They had to do some
for
grading
buffering.
and then
Okay.
plant some buffering. And that's that towards the back of the property again.
Has
They're
anyone
driving-
ever complained like on that? No, I mean, that's right.
Okay, so those are the drive-throughs. Again, to show there are a couple that are closer. Again, the main ones we're talking about. Sorry, everyone whose eyes just went nuts looking at that.
Webster.
Yeah, again, on the corner.
Who knows?
You have some of the existing ones where they could be a little close. We have the one where we already have a concern about potentially that. And so looking at the regulations. So we have, let's see if I can get this out of the way so I can see. So the question is, Again, this was limited from we previously discussion because it was discussed, there's slightly a difference between Cedar Street and Main Street. If the commission would like to open it up and say on arterial, if it's for all of it, that's kind of a question. You know, my recommendation again is to start, see proof of concept, see it works. The applicant who came in was looking at the Cedar Street, and that would give the commission the ability to work with the regulation and kind of go forward, and it can be modified as you go on because regulations aren't set in stone. And then again, so that's a question for the commission. And from there, it's the added language, whether we want to encourage the outdoor seating and walk up. Again, it's not a requirement. I do actually want to look at walk up windows, make sure that we can encourage them for certain type of uses. I think that's not a bad thing at all for our town center, and I don't want to discourage them. Again, the traffic analysis, this is kind of the same as Berlin Turnpike, the way we had it, where stacking length needs to be determined by anticipated volume, and they need to demonstrate that for the commission that it will work. Again, located behind and screened by the principal building. What you can see, well, everything keeps getting in my way. There you go. Again, this is the language which could be changed, but in the event of a change of use, the commission may allow an existing drive-through approved prior to the adoption of this regulation to be utilized in its current configuration, provided that the drive-through meets the requirements of this section and provides landscape screening. So again, new drive-throughs would be constructed behind a building, screened by the building. Again, it's that general strong street facade that's looked for in the town center zoning, pedestrian friendly. But again, it does allow that to be used. And at the last meeting, I showed kind of that Standish, Maine, where they were the ones who really actually had an actual diagram of it showing the drive-throughs in the back. And that's how they looked at it. And that was in their TOD district. From there, again,
Well, I suppose you could have to change the whole traffic pattern, but if you put it behind that particular building, then you don't have enough queuing space.
yeah, that would be a problem for that. Absolutely. And then that's the allowing to use the existing, acknowledging that they're not all going to comply with this, but work it into the regulations.
But then that also for using that corner building on Cedar, the access use change, you'd have to come before that. That's the Achilles heel. You take it from a bank, it's one occupancy, you take it to a restaurant, it's a second.
Right, so it's gonna be a special permit.
Yep, the special permit's required for a restaurant, period. And then it would be a special permit for a restaurant and they'd be coming at the same time for the special permit to have an accessory drive-through. That's how this is structured. Or a restaurant could say, I have a restaurant here, I need to refit everything and I can come in for an accessory drive-through afterwards to add it to an existing, like if, for example, that Liberty Bank was built before, they said we wanted something in the back, okay, kept coming for the special exception for it. So this was kind of the discussion about that 100 feet. There are a couple properties that would cause, that would cause an issue with that they would become non-conforming. Again, that would, if they went in for a change of use in their current configuration, that could be an issue, that 100 feet. So that's up for the commission to decide whether you want to strike it, whether you want to add in some type of language for review. Again, part of the traffic safety shall be located a safe distance from that. Again, it puts it in their traffic engineers, in the traffic engineers wheelhouse to say, okay, here's the study, here's to show the turning movements, here's the average queuing on that, here's the queuing, here's the average on the road, that no, this one driveway will not cause an issue. Or yes, cars are always stacked here. There's very few gaps in between. This could cause an issue with turning movements.
Well, yeah, some of the other issues too, you got, like CPT or Bank of America was built in '69. The traffic use is probably a fraction, right? Same with Wexford, a fraction of what it was.
Yeah, and that's also the main question about when you're going through a change of use. That's the traffic study for part of the change of use. Can the drive-through as constructed handle?
True.
You probably had, you didn't have the lane width, you probably just, one lane each direction and everything was, so you had more space.
Again, drive-through service intercoms must be located to minimize the impact on adjacent uses. This was the 100 feet requiring a sound study that identifies the adverse impacts. Again, it's not a prohibition. It's extra level of information that would be provided to the commission that says, okay, we've looked at it. Here's the speaker we're going to use. Here's the area we're doing. Here's how the residences are. Here's the windows. Here's that. Okay, we need this decibel value. We need to make sure the speaker operates like this, and this is how it's going to work. That way it doesn't prohibit it, but it does put a burden, and I know that it is a burden for an extra study, for an extra report that comes in, but to provide the commission the information. Again, that can be included, that can be striked out. That is up to, up for deliberation. These are just draft regulations that I'm providing the commission. From there, the litter control plan, kind of standard and drive-through regulations that it did can be stricken. Primarily, just to make sure refuse is taken care of.
I think all our businesses really respect it. I see a lot of businesses cleaning up their garbage. I really didn't like this at all.
Okay.
We see people out there. I know what it's like. A lot of the garbage is coming from the cars. It's not coming from the businesses.
Yep, and again, that was
that's really necessary.
Yeah, and as part of that zoning practice, it's part of the other regulations. Again, when they're talking about these uses,
My fear with putting that litter in is the developer or the landlord will then put the onus on the tenant. And it should actually be reversed if you go around. I mean, we had one complaint from years ago, 7-Eleven on Willard Ave. The neighbors complained. It's like to what Dominic said, what can the business, if they don't own the structure?
And sometimes
language in, I see every landlord saying, I don't have to pick up garbage.
To me, that is absolutely not a deal breaker. So that can come out, I've actually had an example of where a landlord, the owner, actually came to me to complain about the tenant to enforce their litter control plan. So it depends on how their lease reads and who's doing what. There's some interesting things that happen. And so this is the last part where the applicant shall submit a special exception modification for a site with an existing accessory drive-through pursuant to this regulation, which must include a traffic impacts analysis per requirement C, if any of the requirement if you expand it over 20% of what it is, that could change the amount of cars, the amount you're able to produce, or if you change the use of the primary building. Again, modification, this isn't saying they have to come into a brand new special exception.
Yeah.
They can incorporate their previous special exception for their drive-through, but then they'll have to do, the traffic report and all that, use those existing plans, but show that they can be proven for the new use to work.
So let me ask you, if H on here, how does that impact to a point of having a site plan modification to the original site plan that was approved for whatever parkade? You're getting in numbers here. You expand a building, does that person, that entity, that person have to come in and do an original site plan modification to the original plans?
Well, a building expansion typically triggers a site plan mod anyway, depending on the area.
Yeah.
But here, if you go up to 19%, like what's your window? I bring that up for, like when we did Brook Street. There's no drive-throughs there right across from the Citgo, but there was some configuration issues. The buildings weren't getting any bigger. The occupancies made the parking get bigger.
And there are other examples of regulations out there that if something does become non-conforming, it can expand in X amount. That's why, I'm glad that I was asked to actually show each individual one, because that's part of the analysis too, that say, okay, which ones are impacted and how does the commission want those treated? Do you want something that specifically says existing, it's existing use. They have the existing use. They're already there. This is actually written specifically pursuant to this regulation. If they change the use, they would have to come in for a new special exception. This is really written more towards, you came in, you applied to all this, you went through all this. Okay, you want to change the use of it. We're just asking you for modification. We're asking you for a traffic report just to make sure your use fits. We're not asking you to completely redo the site plan, completely redo all of that. That way it could potentially save an owner, a significant amount of money. If it works and the site works how they want it already built, they don't have to get a design engineer to give us brand new plans to reuse the ones that were there. So this was kind of thinking towards the future on, okay, if these change uses, what's really the most important thing? And the most important thing is, can that volume that's anticipated be handled by that drive-through? It's already been approved, if something went through this regulation, it's already been approved by the commission under a special exception. It's already been shown that it can work in that area. They've demonstrated it. It's been active. The commission will be able to see it active. So from there, it's, okay, you want to change it? What's the change going to be? What's the impact on queuing? Will it work? And that's really the big important thing when you change a use.
Input, guys?
I have one last question on stating where drive-throughs can and can't be based on roads they're on or not on. We want to get into that language to say that you can't.
That's A, he's asking us what we feel.
It's like saying, oh, I want to put it here, it fits, but it's not on Cedar Street.
Yeah.
It's not like, I can only put it on East Cedar Street for whatever reason,
Yeah.
Like, if we want to get that, to me, is like, we're telling someone like, you're only allowed here, sorry. Like, I don't know how the legal side of that, if they're.
For a good example on that, one of the example regulations of one of the towns that recently relaxed drive-through regulations was West Hartford. And that was up in, I always forget the name of that because, Blueback Square, everyone knows that. It's the other region north of it.
Bishop's Quarter.
They've kind of relaxed that. And they actually very specifically also put, it must be on, I think it was like arterial state road, like they put that specific requirement that didn't allow it on a collector, that didn't allow it on other streets. They specifically said arterial on that. Originally, I had it as arterial for all of it. It was kind of discussed the difference. I think talking about the Bank of America, if that site, if a big, heavy, intensive user comes in there, that could have been an issue. That was a comment that was addressed. A comment that was.
Well, that was when you said that McDonald's came there, which is impossible.
Yeah, and that was, I think one of the commissioners said if that happened, that would be bad. So it's like,
it wouldn't happen because we wouldn't allow it because it wouldn't be able to handle the flow. But in reality, they would never pick a site like that because they're looking for major highways, 44, Berlin Turnpike, stuff like that. I mean, we have to be a little realistic.
Yeah, and again, if it's returning to arterial, what level are you looking at it for the business town center? Because again, the roads are a little different, kind of in that area, and there was, as you said, and actually that was news that there was an approved, drive-through previously on the Best Market site. So again, is that something that the commission?
They may want to come back down the road as soon as we can get the owner to work with the town.
It was a bank, by the way.
It was a bank, okay.
It was a bank, it was People's Bank, I believe.
Yeah. So again, that's for
I agree
consideration.
with Commissioner Claffey. I'm not in favor of A.
Because they have to come here for a special exception regardless. If we keep that language in, if that language was to stay, you'd have to come for an exception to the overall rule. I mean,
No,
No,
I think,
no,
they wouldn't be allowed to if they don't, or if they're not on Cedar Street or East Cedar Street, they wouldn't be allowed to
restaurant,
come in
correct.
for a restaurant.
So
And I think that we're narrowing it down too much.
And that's a question that's the main question too, is are you looking at it as the entire zone or are you looking for certain areas? Again, it does provide some guidance to those looking at the regulations and saying, okay, if I wanted to put one on Lowry and I wanted to reconfigure something, if the commission's going to say, no, that's not realistic, should I even be wasting that? Now they can come in for a pre-app, they can do that, or they can look at it and say, no, it's not wanted in that area. And that's a bigger question for, what do you envision town center, those uses, and where can drive-throughs fit into those uses and how you want town center really used and what we see it in the future being used as.
Steve?
No, I'm good.
You're in favor of narrowing it just to those two streets, or do you want?
I will take it out.
You'd like to take that out? Okay, any other input on that A? You want to keep it to those two streets or as a narrow?
I mean, there's really only those two streets. We'll go back. You got the,
But this would be, I believe what the intent is, this is would be for new, anything that's existing.
well, that's what I'm, but
Well,
your existing goes down Garfield. Someone could come into the OFI and say, you know, we're gonna tear that
Why
building
is this
down.
only for new and not existing?
Yeah, that,
Well, so this is existing, zoning is not gonna be retroactive. They have what they have.
I
They're
understand.
absolutely grandfathered in, so this would be a change, but this is for new that we don't already have, that these would be that set of criteria.
Apply to the existing too for the restaurant
or change of use.
or change of use?
For change of use.
But the building and it still exists in its location.
Yeah, so I think the question is, so if it's not, you don't want to define it and you find that a little off to have, again, e-cedar and so tightly, then the question is it arterials to start, which is again that, or is it opening up the entire zone?
I think you have to include opening the whole zone because you have 9 parcels that aren't all on, there's only 3 that there's.
Whole
No, they're
zone.
all, I'm sorry, take that back.
Right now,
But you're-
currently, all of these drive-throughs would comply with being on arterials, which actually is not that far off of what the commission in the past and the town has already approved in the areas. They're all on arterials. They all have frontage on arterials. And it doesn't, being on an arterial doesn't say that they have to put their driveway out to the arterial. Sometimes it's better that they don't, especially in the town center. These ones that are built with it behind it, these areas where you have combined traffic, combined entrances, you can actually keep that solid street front, which a lot of them have.
The drive-through wasn't going on the red parcel. The red parcel is Keeney.
Yeah.
No, there's no drive-through proposed.
That's just because that's zone PD.
It's, yeah, that's just the zone map. Yeah, the zone we're talking about is everything in that dark purple.
So,
So what if Lowerly Place, they wanted to put one in over at Best Market?
So the
This-
way the regulation, if we say arterial, the answer would be that they wouldn't be permitted by the regulations to have an accessory one. And then the question for the commission would be, if you see a proposal, do you change the regulations? Is it something like that, or do you want to have it open to allow those to come in?
I'd like to see it open, to see it if they might not comply with something else, but I think it should be open.
Constance Lee, Lowerly,
Yep.
there's opportunity there.
Yep.
Especially now with what Keeney's planning on doing.
And then the only other thing is I really want to make sure that we don't add anything in here for distances that's going to put anybody, any existing business non-conform. I think, especially if they don't know about it, that was part of the problem before. So, whatever one of these that creates that situation, I'm not in favor of.
So that would be the 100 feet to a corner intersection. So that one specifically, there are a couple of that one. And then the question is, as far as, so where,
Well, F is the one, the distance to residential.
yeah, F is the distance. So yeah, it's actually on the same. So could keep changing when I click it. All right. So you have the driveway entrance and egress location. So you space at least 100 feet from corner intersection. Whether you just want that stricken from it, whether you want other language, again, for the town engineer review for that, or whether just the second part, because this actually comes directly from the Business Berlin Turnpike regulation. It just lowers 150 to 100 because this area is slightly different. And that the second part, the commission may limit the number of driveways, adjacent properties, driveway connection. This is already part of that regulation. This was taken directly from it.
Wait, where was that directly taken from?
Business Berlin Turnpike drive-through.
Is that for
criteria.
new or?
Well, it's what's in the regulations currently now. So it would be for any new development.
Trying to think of, downtown is, with this is interesting because so many drive-throughs are part of a different, like already are so existing now, the curb cuts are already in. I mean, there's no place really in town you could put a new one.
Right.
I mean, you could potentially, if you have a large enough site, you want to move your curb cut, they may make you close one to state and relocate one.
Okay, got it.
Gee?
My question is about the importance of corners and what I mean, if you can elaborate on that distance to corners, I mean, I just think that there's probably something there.
Yeah, the primary part we'll show this, for example, because it is the tightest one. So when you have it this close to a corner, you don't have either pulling out on that, and it depends on which way you're pulling to. So this actually is compliant. But if you had someone pulling out even closer, or someone pulling out into traffic here, right after someone is taking a right, you can have, you know, your traffic accident right there when you have maneuvers that are happening too close to each other without someone being able to actually see down the road. Corners are also important visually as well, but for traffic specifically, you know, it's actually that safe intersection. There's multiple regulations out there talking about corners and that there is, again, the importance of traffic safety.
But that's actually kind of a poor example because that's the entrance to the bank also, right? So.
Yeah, and that one
It is one lane is for the drive-through, but it's the main entrance to the bank. It's the only, well, I suppose you can come in the back way, but it's the main entrance into the.
And the timings, what people have seen too is if you have cars queued up here, you have a car pulling in and they want to take a left in, they stop right here and they start to back up traffic into the intersection. So that's the concern with something that's so tight like that.
And whether the drive-through there or not, that's still a problem. Right, I mean, even just a little bit to the north there, you know, those 4 or 5 spaces in front of Goldberger's, when somebody's backing out there, everybody's got to stop and wait anyway. So you just, whether the drive-through's there or not, like you said, it's a traffic issue.
And that's the state taking advantage of us and widening the road so it's to maximum.
Until they're out of,
They're out of space. Let's just put a couple drive-throughs right there and really make a change.
You know, I think if you have,
Strike that.
you could put some language in there without the distance requirements to give us some, to provide us some protection for situations.
Yeah, shall
But without
demonstrate
the-
safe
Without the
distance.
distances so that we don't create any nonconformity. And then I think everybody was in agreement of removing the A there.
The distance requirement would also, if you remove it, the traffic study will prove it right or wrong.
Right.
So are we covered on that?
Yes.
I mean, you could put language in there to require, you know, the traffic study.
No, it's
Yep, I'll
already-
just make sure that the way our language of their traffic study, turning movements in and out, like, that it clearly, because we already have it right here where, you know, volume, turning movements. So turning movements is there, that can be expanded slightly. Because a lot of people look at turning movements within and they try to say certain that one, but they don't look far enough beyond the site to say, okay, what's this gonna cause a conflict with?
Commissioner Woods?
I always overthink these things. So my question is, I'm assuming I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it. You're not getting any complaints on any of our drive-throughs, are you? For noise, for traffic? Non-existent, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it was looking at, no, and I could say that, no, I have not had complaints on any drive-throughs that are currently existing. Most of them are existing for some lower volume uses, primarily banks. Some are high at sometimes. Restaurants can be higher. That's when you can get some of the conflict. So this is, again, looking at ways to look at that and get the information in front of the commission that all the conflicts are shown to you. So it sounds like,
More clarification on anything else?
again, so just to clarify, so item A, that the commission wants to open up the entire zone and don't do just arterials for right now?
Correct. Yep, Commissioner Rhodes?
I agree.
We're gonna open the floodgates. No, just wanted to build.
And if we do, we'll have to look at it.
But, and the one thing is if they meet the requirements, if they have a traffic study that shows it works, if they have that, but then, yes, you can have that. So if that's what the commission, you know, it's kind of looking at, again, best market, how it's done. Okay, if it's a large one there. Again, I understand the realities of no, like Chick-fil-A isn't looking at town center and saying that's where I want to be by volume of cars, but what do we not see yet that's out there? And it's going to be that next drive-through. You have, you know, Taco Bell's complete drive-through, 100% thing that they built, massive amount of cars through it. Everyone's kind of experimenting right now with drive-throughs and different models that are out there. So again, that's kind of just my concerns about looking at entire.
Well, that brings up your B point. I mean, I know one in Bloomfield did it. Dunkin' Donuts, they have one. does pretty well.
Yeah, and then that's why
It's
that's,
only, granted, it's not in their downtown because they don't have room. They're kind of the most equal to ins and outs. If you take downtown Bloomfield and how many banks are there and how the curb cuts are, it's almost a mirror to Newington. But are there any other, does anyone know any town that has a purely drive-through only in their downtown? Any revitalized
I think
parts?
one time that does pop up is a little bit with like somebody that has like a Dunkin' that's in a gas station or something. They have a little window they can drive around the back. They probably do have some counter service in there, but they don't want to compete with the convenience store coffee. So I don't know quite how it works, but
yeah. And that was,
I mean, no one brought up B. I mean, it's,
Well, we're going through the list now.
I mean,
Restaurants with accessory drive-through must include indoor service.
yeah, and actually,
why? Is there a benefit or what's the negative to that? I don't know. I'm just
I don't
asking
know.
a discussion.
the main was looking at, again, drive-through only, so, drive-through only, there's no pedestrian interaction. So you're taking that parcel in an area where, yes, we want people to go from business to business within town center. You're saying that one is nope, cars only, pedestrian kind of excluded from it, no window, no service, no anything, just for cars. That's perfectly fine. Berlin Turnpike, yes, that's perfectly meant for a use like that. I just have a concern with something like that in town center.
Oh,
It really
hearing
kind of,
how
I
you're
don't know
saying,
if
yeah,
a use like
it creates
that
a
would ever
dead
exist.
parcel to,
in a downtown.
I don't think that that use would
Oh,
ever
it's coming.
exist anyway.
It's coming.
drive-through only?
Drive-through only?
There
Oh,
is
yeah.
a drive-through only
I don't
Dunkin'
know
that I
about
worked on in
downtown,
Meredith
but
that I
like-
got approved.
Remember
Yeah.
when we did it? I think I was back on it, that over on Fenn and Cedar, that the Asian restaurant was supposed to be drive-through only, where,
Noodle company.
Yeah, it was a pickup window.
yeah, it's just a pickup window.
Yeah, they didn't have any
All right,
indoor seating.
let's plan to go right through. Paul, you want to?
I just want to kind of, I'm wondering now, after the whole conversation, why don't we just leave the restaurant exclusion in? It seems to be the only business that can propose, that can possibly cause a lot of potential pitfalls that we think we don't want there. If it's already in the regulations, why are we taking it out? I mean,
Because
it's
there's
just it's an
businesses that
open-
want to go in. That's why we were here 2 weeks ago and everybody was in agreement that the Dunkin' Donuts wouldn't be a bad site for that corner piece of property over there. That's why we're going through this regulation.
So you can't give him an exception? We can't give him an exception?
The only exception to the regulations is a variance. Otherwise, it has to be enabled in the regulations to be eligible for a special exception. Currently, it is not enabled.
just exclude.
Just because restaurants have problems, doesn't mean that we're not going to allow them. It means that we're just going to address screening. We're going to address maybe having the opportunity for these places to have a pickup window so that creates walkability or anything else that's there.
I mean, it seems that that's exactly what Paul's doing, is he's putting a lot of those kind of parameters in there so we have something to refer back to when the thing that we don't think is good for the town wants to come in.
Well,
That's,
have Paul finish going through the list there. So you went through A. I don't think anybody had a problem with B.
And again, if you want me to add that language, I think it's not a bad.
I like the language added. I don't know about everybody else, but I think the ability to have the walk-up window or the outdoor seating is a plus.
Mhm. And again, it's looking at that use and saying, okay, you have a drive-through, but what can you provide for those walking around too? Because the drive-through is going to be busy at different times than people are potentially walking down in the area. Drive-throughs are that intensive on the way to work, on the way home from work, or very late night. And then you have the intermediate area where people are actually out and about, where drive-throughs aren't used as highly. So they're really used at these very peak periods where they're very intense and then kind of sporadic. You drive down the Berlin Turnpike at a time that isn't lunch, that isn't morning, and you look and there's no one in the Dunkin' drive-through. There's very few people in the other ones. They're very intense, time-specific uses.
Well, now that we talk about B, I definitely like the idea of the, outdoor seating is almost kind of the thing, it's, I don't know. I'm trying to word. But anyway, the walk-up windows, I think are terrific. Where feasible, of course, because like I said, you know.
Yeah, we should
you're
encourage
walking around
those.
the center, you just want a hot dog or something real quick.
I think encouraging those, especially on the backside towards the municipal parking lot, anything we can do to activate that space more as people walk around through it, get more people there, more people interested, more investment. And then C is again, pretty standard. It's the traffic study. The main thing is they do have to go volume of customers, that stacking length needed for the anticipated volume. And then turning movements, capacity, level of service, that's all pretty standard for that. Again, located behind and screened by the principal building and positioned to minimize conflicts with doorways and pedestrians. And this was the inventive change of use. The commission may allow an existing drive-through prior to the adoption of this regulation to be utilized in its current configuration, provided that drive-through meets the requirements of this section and with the adequate landscape screen. And then driveway entrance, again, we're gonna look at this. It was recommended that I remove the 100 feet and then come up with other language again to either view that or view the traffic study to make sure that those turning movements are properly covered. And the other, again, limiting the number of driveway with adjacent or inter-property driveway connections that already exists with a lot of our driveways now. For example, especially in the town center. The town center has done a good job with that through the years of combining and going through. So not everyone needs a curb cut.
That's right.
So that's
Combining curb cuts
Yes.
in a congested area is a very good thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So I think that should stay in there.
Yep.
Standard for there. The order intercoms to minimize the impact on adjacent uses. Again, this is the 100 feet and the requirement of the study. It was talked a little bit about by the commission. I don't know your thoughts specifically on that one, whether you would like this to proceed as written or any modifications.
Does it make anything non-conforming?
I'd like to take the 100 feet out. Just for the simple fact that we've got that one bank that's 32 feet from the Goldberger's building. I mean, is there a way to base it on use? I mean, a bank's hours are, used to be 9 to 5. Now it's like what? It's like 10 to 4.
That's why under the special exception, we always ask
If we do
hours
it
of
that
operation.
way, as opposed to, if a restaurant comes in and wants to go to that, small little mom and pop restaurant, not a chain, wants to go into that, if the bank ever leaves, then, I mean, if they're gonna be open significantly later, that's more of an impact to the people living in the building 32 feet away, as opposed to, between the hours of 9 and 5. So I don't know if we need the 100 feet, if we could base it, some distance, but, keep in the study about noise and abatement, for the speaker volumes and such. But just to arbitrarily say 100 feet, if somebody wants to change the use of that building, then that drive-through is automatically out.
So what I say is, it would make the drive-through out. It would mean, and there's only one that's within the 100 feet.
Yeah, that's the one next to Goldberg.
Yeah.
I can't think of the bank.
And what it would require, that it's not out. They would just know that they need to come with an application that says, we studied the noise, here's the speaker we're gonna use, here's that, this is how it's not gonna impact that. But they're notified if you're within that. And again, this is not even just for the existing for the change, a proposed new one too.
Okay.
If someone wanted to put one in close to another residential or that, okay, what are you doing? It's an indicator for the applicant to say, if you're planning to put your speaker within 100 feet, you're required to submit this, this information, which
decibel levels of the speaker.
Okay.
I mean, they can certainly give us a study and say, hey, this is the loudest decibel you're gonna hear out the property line, and that falls within the noise ordinance or whatever that is.
Okay.
Decibel
Makes sense.
level.
So again, it's a criteria for triggering the review. So those beyond 100 feet don't have to submit you the sound study, a specific sound study that says, okay, here's that. They should have in their application that they've considered it, what they have kind of, more broad, but they wouldn't be required to say, no, specifically, here's all the information. Here's how we're going to make sure that this one doesn't cause an issue.
Okay,
So
thank you. That makes sense.
And like you said, all the criteria puts everybody on a level playing field when they come in for these types of things. So they know what they need to provide and do and demonstrate to you guys so you can evaluate it.
Okay.
Okay. So the next one, the litter control plan, it was noted to strike that. Again, an applicant will come in, you'll see refuse locations, you'll see trash bins if they need it, and we'll continue this regular enforcement with normal talking to businesses and having, you know, and again, I actually haven't seen it in the months I've been here. I haven't seen that many issues from the businesses. I've seen a lot more in the past at other municipalities, so that's actually something that's very good. And again, the last one to discuss. This is when they have an existing special application. This says pursuant to this regulation. So they've already come in, proven that they gone through these steps. Then if they come in for a change of use, they're submitting a modification to you that includes a traffic impact analysis and anything else they're changing. So if they're not changing anything, they really come in to you saying, here's our new use. Here's how our traffic works with it. We're leaving everything the same. Here's our study. Can we have the new use there rather than here's a brand new plan? That's the intent. That's why it's very specifically says approved pursuant to this regulation.
Supposed to save, they'll say, that'll save the applicant time and money.
And then when a change of use, that's when they would come in to apply this regulation to it. Again, bank to a restaurant, they're coming to you for that special exception for the accessory to a restaurant, and we'll go from there.
Any questions from commissioners? What was that, Eric?
No, I was just saying, what we were just talking about would apply to the Dunkin' Donuts that's being discussed, is this existing drive-through.
So actually, so the way it would work is the way this is visual work. So the initial, so if that site was to come in, they're coming for a special exception with review. That's why it says you can approve the commission can approve an existing one, provided this is done.
Yeah.
Then they have approval subject to this section. Someone else comes into that same one and says, okay, we don't want it to be a Dunkin' anymore. We want to go back to a dry cleaners, or we want to go to something else or a bank. Okay, yep, just show us the study that what you're doing is no less or no more, and you'll be okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right, and you'll make sure that nothing is in there that's gonna make anybody non-conforming. The existing business is non-conforming.
Yes, that 100-foot, if someone does change that corner, they'll just know that they have to do a study and demonstrate that that new speaker, whatever they do, is not going to impact those residences. That's the only one that I can foresee of an existing one. Again, it's not a prohibition. Nothing would stop them from changing the use. It just requires them one additional piece of information to provide to the commission.
Okay. All right. Are you going to, when you, next meeting, we're gonna send this off to CROG too? At the same time?
If you'd like me to, I can make all the edits that we talked about and I can submit it to start the clock running.
Yep.
We can, you know, I don't see any substantial changes. It might be a little wording here, a little there, nothing that would trigger a re-advertisement for a public hearing. But if a public hearing is held and there are revisions during the public hearing, that could happen as well.
Yep.
But this would at least get the process started.
Very good. Okay.
So I will submit that, Mr. Chairman, and then submit it for the commission what I did on the next packet, and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? All right, good job, Paul and Eric. Anything else under your town planner's report?
That is all I have for tonight.
Under communications is the next item. Everybody's got the CROG letters. Does anybody have any questions concerning any of those? Okay, we're at public participation. If there's anybody online or here in the room would like to speak, come forward, please.
No one online, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. No, you're good.
Hi, everyone. Jacob Knowlton, 10 Hillside Street, resident, not Crosby. Per today, per all days, I don't really speak. I'm the kind of person who's like, I'm not gonna bring anything up unless there's reason for concern. And the drive-through in the center of town situation, it seems like I've lived here for 23 years. Everyone here wants a small town. feel, like good community. Everyone here is relatively blue collar, friendly, whatnot, right? But we don't have too many opportunities outside of special events in town to get out of our car and see people on a daily basis. We don't get to walk around too much without being threatened by something, and I'll go into that in a little bit. And get to feel comfortable, talk to people without a lot of noise, and interact with our fellow town folk, right? And by special events, I mean like the extravaganza, cornhole, all that good stuff, right? That's awesome. My job is to understand the social dynamics and the physical dynamics of infrastructure that you regulate for, and that you put into your area. And I understand, Commissioner Claffey, you mentioned wanting to make things so that people want to come to your town center. And there's a couple things here that are worth mentioning. Other people's, other towns, other municipalities' actions that are going on at the moment. You have the Silestine Highway in Weathersfield, the town that we compete with relatively, that is becoming walkable. They are on this huge mission to infill and provide pedestrian enhancements so that you can get that. And that is with the understanding of one fact, which is pedestrian traffic is far more profitable than car traffic. And that comes down to the scale that you have to build for. So when you build for a human, you're a human size, right? So it doesn't take up that much space. So you have only this amount of infrastructure that you're paying for with taxpayer money to maintain. You can fit 10 times as many people in that space than you can a car. When you build for cars, it increases the scale dramatically. And what that does, it creates daunting spaces for people to walk through for a couple of reasons. One, it's the scale that they feel in a space. I know it's very strange, but there's a rule that we follow, which is a 2-to-1 ratio when it comes to building height to road width. And that's because that's the average comfortability of a human person on Boulevard. And it's because of enclosure, all these different things. But when you build for a car, it increases that dramatically, and it increases the noise, and it increases all these different things, the amount of money you have to put in to maintain all this stuff. But more importantly, it does one thing. And anyone have kids? Everyone have kids? What do you do when you're walking in a parking lot? You grip their hand like crazy, right? And why is that? Because the car's there and there's potential that it's gonna hit someone. And there's always that stress. As a parent, there's always going to be that stress. And one of my favorite things to do is to go get my morning coffee at Toast and Oats in the center of town and sit there. And sometimes I get to bring my little brother around, but I can't sit there comfortably, right? Because there's that drive-through that we talked about tonight right next to there, that he's a psycho. He's a 3-year-old kid or 5-year-old kid now. He's running around like crazy, right? I can't sit comfortably in the space that's supposed to be the pedestrian friendly area because he might get hit by a car, right? So when you're considering this stuff, you should really be looking at that map and being like, you have 9 drive-throughs. That's crazy, man. That's crazy. 9 drive-throughs in the center of your town, the pedestrian haven. That's supposed to be where your people can go. And especially with your aging population, our aging population, that's going to be huge in a couple of years because they need to get out and be healthy and interact with their community so that they can make friends as well, because that's crazy hard to do. And so when you're discussing this kind of stuff, think about not just the functional aspects of what cars can do and whatnot, but what it's going to do to your population and kind of the behaviors and the dynamics that you're incentivizing because of that. How comfortable are people walking around the center of your town with their kids? How much traffic do you have on Cedar? And how much more are you going to bring because you're throwing in an easy access for coffee in the morning, which is great. I love that, but it does make me want to drive there more, right? So think about those things. I love this town and I want to be able to grow up here or old, and I want my siblings to do the same. But if it becomes a situation where it's just cars everywhere, that kind of sucks, you know? That's not a great way to live. I mean, it's great for access in terms of if you got 10K to drop on a car, used car, and you want to go somewhere, but if you don't got that money, that sucks for you. And then if you do have that, you're just getting in your car and you're going every which way. You have a drive-through, you're not getting out of your car to talk to nobody. You're having that quick interaction at the window. You're not making any friends, right? So think about that kind of stuff as well. In terms of making things non-conforming, obviously we kind of work through that. But you don't really have a threat of kicking out any business or harming anyone because obviously people can get grandfathered in. And worst case comes to worst, change is all right. And if you messed up in the past, that's all right. I'm not saying anyone did, but sometimes you got to restart, rethink, and think about what is going to be healthier for especially something so special as your town center, which is kind of the heart of your town, you know? So really consider that. And don't just go about to please businesses and all that good stuff. I appreciate your time and thank you. Walkability. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak under public participation, either online or anyone else here? Anybody online, Eric?
Online, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Okay, hearing none else, then we will go to remarks by commissioners if there is any.
Two questions, one concern and then a question. Main Street, 1934. Months ago about the automotive repairs in cars filling the backyard of it.
Mhm.
Is there anything going on? I mean, they have 15, 20, 10, 12. Every weekend they're working on cars. Now they got tents up to cover the cars. I mean, it's.
Okay.
And I brought it up 2 months ago and.
Okay, we'll have Eric
Set
look
them a
into it.
notice and
Anything else?
Just 1910 Main Street too. The car's been sitting on the grass so long, it's about a foot around them in height. But again, that was, I guess, resolved, but it's back again.
Okay, any other commissioners have anything? All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion made, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good, thank you very much and good night, everybody. 1934.
It's the back lot.
Is that the, on the curve there?
On the curve in the back.
The town still have a, doesn't the town